as I kind of alluded to, all around resource planning, organising the work, working out the most efficient way to organise work within a contact centre, to make sure that you can and also to make sure that you can realise benefits of any tech that you're putting in. So on our funnel, effectively, like we said, I kind of stay within the top 3 boxes. So the top box is kind of mainly where I start. So I'm kind of the first port of call, because we work on the basis that putting technology into a suboptimal environment will dilute the benefits that you'll get from the technology in the first place. So what we like to do first is actually go through and make sure that your operating environment is as optimised as we can get first, and then you'll start with things like, putting speech in or all those sorts of, or automation and things. And then actually what you're going to get is, when we work out the benefits case, you'll actually realise what the technology is going to give you, rather than filling a gap in operational process for that. So workforce planning optimisation. So why do customers kind of come to us? So multitude of reasons, not always on the back of tech. So we have things like, so if you're abandoning a lot of calls and you're failing service, we have customers that come to us and actually say, can you help us work out why and work out a solution for that? If you put a new workforce management system in that you come to us for, we always advocate that we go and have a look first and make sure that what you put into the new system, or what you set up in a system, is as optimised as you can. So you're not just going to put in any suboptimal or failing processes into a new piece of tech that way, so we can kind of advise and things on that for you. Some big ones are around transformation. So from a workforce planning perspective, that is how you track the benefits of any transformation that you're doing within your resource plans. So if you've got a robust set of tools first to work out how many people you need, when you start dropping transformation activity in, you can very quickly work out what benefit those technologies are driving through in the contact centre. We do benchmarking around existing planning teams and best practice. And one of the key ones as well for us is increasing efficiency. So that's really the key. One of the key drivers that people come to us is they want to be more efficient, and then they come to us to see if there's a way that they can do that in their environment. Excuse me. So how do we do that? So our approach is effectively this 5-step approach. So what we do initially is we have what we call an analyse and assess phase, which is about 4-hour workshop that we come and do for free. And effectively what that is to do is to understand your operating environment, your constraints, your challenges, how many people you've got, what your volumes are, handle times, all those bits and pieces, so we can really understand what goes on in your contact centre. And then from that, we can then identify opportunities and work out a way to resolve any issues you might be having in there. What we do then is anything that we go through in the workshop, the initial workshop, we then back it up with data, as Al said. So we are very data driven. So once we've kind of worked out how everything's organised and everything else, we then go through a data phase where we get all the data to back up what's actually happening in there, in your environment. What we do then is so this stage 3 is a very collaborative stage, a design and develop stage with our customers, because we know contact centres really well. You guys know your businesses really well. So we have to make sure that the two meet. So, it's a very joined up process to get through that design and develop phase of working out what is the optimum solution for your environment in there. And then we get down to delivery. So some customers will effectively just take all the recommendations we make and try and deliver it themselves. Quite a lot of them ask us to come along and help them deliver those benefits and those changes that we're proposing. And then we even do sort of a follow-on managed service for some clients where, for one of our clients, Newcastle City Council, we did effectively a day a month every, for about a year. I think we're just coming up to that finish sort of March now. So it's about a year since we started with those, just to make sure that actually anything that we've put in place sticks. So if they want to review anything, anything's changed in their environment, we have that day a month in so that they can come back to us and say, actually, if this happens, what do I do? Or I've changed this, what's that going to do? And make sure that they've taken all the learnings that we've tried to pass on to them. Okay, so that's pretty much how the workforce planning stuff works and our process. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through a couple of case studies in here, so you can kind of see the sort of benefits and things that we've had driven by, in my case study, it's mainly the output from the workforce optimisation and the data work. So we work very hand in hand together for that. So first one, on the slide, is Newcastle City Council. So when we actually went in, it was before they merged back together. It was actually Your Homes Newcastle. So it was the housing part, but they also did the main council contact centre itself is all in kind of one big contact centre. So they're quite small, only about 55 call taking FTE, about 60 FTE in total for that. So what they actually came to us for was they asked us to sell them a queue buster. So they were having high abandon rates, high average speed of answer, and through their peer group that they meet with regularly, they'd seen queue buster in other environments, and they came to us and said, can I have a queue buster, because I think that's what I need. What we did, however, is we kind of went, we can sell you a queue buster, but let's have a look first, because it only really works in the right circumstances. So let's have a look under the hood and see what's actually happening, and then we can work out whether or not the queue buster is actually the right solution for you. So what we did was, did what we call our diagnostic, where we go in, try and find out the root cause of any issues, and then work out what the best solution would be. In this instance, putting a queue buster in wouldn't have helped. So because they had high abandon rate and high average speed of answer, they constantly had a queue. So don't know how a queue buster works. Effectively, it holds the place in the queue and then re-delivers the call back when there's availability. But if there's no available time, it can't re-deliver back the call, and that was their issue. They had no idle time to put the calls back into, so it would have been a waste of money, really, putting a queue buster in at that stage for them. So what we did instead was we went through all the findings that we found with them. So what we try and do is we try and plot out of the workshop where people sit in this grid. So if you have what we call low work to pay ratio, which is effectively your efficiency score, and you're failing service levels, and really what you want to be doing, you want to try and increase your efficiency, because increasing your efficiency will help you achieve your service levels, because you're doing more with the same people. If you're failing your service levels, but you're highly efficient, then actually it's more around trying to maximise your service levels, etc. So with Your Homes, it was all about increased efficiency for those guys. They were failing the service levels, and the way that they were measuring their productivity, they weren't as productive as they could have been in there. So actual outcomes that we found, they had a high abandon rate, about 54%. Average speed of answer was 14 minutes-ish, quite high. Only 45% of the agent time was actually spent doing customer work. So the other 55% was lost to shrinkage and all those other bits and pieces. And obviously with it being a housing provider and local council working to a defined budget. So you can't just put more people on, they'd already hit the max in their budget, therefore that's why they came looking for a different solution. So, targeted outcomes. So from the design, through the design and develop phase, we worked out, because based on all those issues that we found and the issues that they were having, we then design a set of targeted outcomes that hopefully will get them into this maximising the customer outcomes bucket. So, key one, reduce the abandon rate. Reduce average speed of answer. Now initially we were aiming for about 300 seconds. Their target was about 170, but the initial view was actually the target for the initial piece where it needs to be about 300. Still a third of what it was, pretty much. Increase the percentage of time agents spend servicing customers, and control costs, which basically means they're not allowed to employ anybody else. So we have to do it in their environment, no technology, and no more people. So what we did, so we split our Optimise into two stages generally. The first one is focused on delivery. So what we did initially was we built and deployed a reporting suite that effectively allowed them to fully track what the agents had done. And therefore what that allowed them to do is spot what we call gap, which is effectively gaps between what they think an agent is doing and what an agent actually does, and therefore you can then manage or encourage those behaviours. But if you can't see it, you can't do anything about it. So that was one of the first things that we did. Made changes to the call routing to increase the efficiency. So they have a switchboard line that just historically just gone into the main call centre. Those take about 50 seconds. Their actual average handle time's closer to 5.5 minutes. So people who were a really quick resolution on switchboard were waiting sometimes for people to finish a 5.5 minute call before they got to that call, and then they'd actually just get routed somewhere else and have to go sit in another queue. So we split that out and got the switchboard calls answered and redirected really quickly, which actually then freed up more people to deal with the actual customer contact that they were there for. We increased the visibility of the agent activity and increased the team leader focus on it. So there is this thing where if you are constantly on a Birmingham platform, so your contact center is, to want of a better word, on fire effectively all the time and for a long time, you start to lose that sort of management focus on what the agents are doing. It's all around putting the latest fire out for it. So gave all the team leaders sort of the increased focus and the visibility of the reporting, and then got them to focus on real-time management of the agents. So just making sure that the agents stuck to the plan, essentially. So once we'd done all that, we went into our second phase. So our second phase is what we call a move from reactive to proactive. So this is, once we've put the fire out, how do we stop it setting fire again? How do we keep it out? So we built and employed a volume forecasting model. So they kind of had one, but it wasn't really robust. It was more how many calls do I think I'm going to get based on what I got last year? So we put a proper volume forecasting model in. On the back of that, we then built and deployed a best practice planning model for them that was really robust. And when you can, so effectively any change in the volume forecast, you just drop it straight in. It tells you exactly how many people you need, change all your inputs and everything else. But it's all, because it's all locked down and governed, it means that you don't get this issue of people overtyping things and all the rest of it. So we kind of put a fixed model in place for them. We improved the shrinkage planning process. So what we find in a lot of areas is that shrinkage planning is one of those things that a lot of people will download, for instance, the shrinkage model off Call Centre Helper, put some of their data into it and use that as a starting point, which is kind of fine if you're open 365 days a year and bank holidays are a normal day and everybody books holidays on them. So one of the issues that I have with that model is it uses 261 days as a denominator, which assumes you are open and fully staffed on a bank holiday and it's just a normal day for everybody. In most environments it's not. Most environments actually you only need 20% of people to work bank holidays and the rest take it as a bank holiday, and they can't book holiday if it's on a bank holiday, so therefore it's really 253 days. So between that and meeting and training time or investment time, where most people just put 5, 6, 7, 8% in sometimes, what we did was we went through and went, right, what's your actual holiday accrual rate? What do you actually do on bank holidays? What actual meetings do your team leaders have with your agents? What's your actual break policy? And effectively put all that through our best practice shrinkage planning model, and it actually took about 1.5% off their planned shrinkage. So they were actually planning to a shrinkage that was slightly too high, just because they'd used what they felt were industry standards rather than actually thinking about and going through everything in detail. What we did then was develop what we call out of the possible schedules and a skills trading matrix. So the scheduling is effectively the blue sky, what should my schedules look like to meet my demand profile, because very few of our clients are in a position where they can just realign everybody's shift straight away if that's what needs to be done. What we do is we kind of built out for them a standardised set of schedules for them, so when they were recruiting new people or people were changing their hours, they knew where they had gaps in their delivery profile and therefore what shift that they were better off recruiting. And the skills training matrix came out of the fact that for 54 FTE they had 30 different skill lines and not everybody can do everything. So they had this mishmash of people doing all sorts of bits and pieces, because obviously the longer you've been there, the more skills you've accrued. What we actually worked out was we mapped out everybody's skill and then worked out for them exactly which agents to train in which skills next to deliver the biggest benefit in the contact centre. So, did that for them. So, outcomes for the client. So, as we said, so they started about 5,200 calls a week, 54% abandon, 14-minute average speed of answer. As I said, so 342-second AHT. Not bad. Sickness was at 8%, we said the efficiency, the work to pay efficiency was at 45. When they implemented everything that we'd gone through with no more people, they managed to answer 10,200 calls a week on average by reorganising the work. We dropped the abandon rate from 54 to 15, which actually in their environment they have an underlying the way the calls route 10% that you just can't get to anyway. So in real terms, if it was a single point of contact, they'd be at 5%. The ASA we got down to 99 seconds, and this was up to sort of October-ish last year. The target's 170, and they're still running all the way through their peak period at about 120 seconds. So they're still well under their target. We took 12% out of the AHT by doing nothing with the AHT. So by creating available time, it just drops the AHT. RAP comes down. Agents don't have to take time back between calls because they naturally get time between calls. So it just drops your AHT a bit. Sickness, paid sickness cut in half. So it went from 8% down to 4% over the period. And the work to pay ratio, the efficiency actually went from 45 to 58%. So 29% increase in productivity. So we actually made the agents do more work, and they were still happier for doing more work by the fact that the sickness dropped and the AHT dropped. So it's one of those, you'd think it don't happen, but it does. The more productive the agents, the more bought in the agents get, actually the more, the happier they are, even though you're getting them to do more. So that change was the equivalent of them, under their existing processes, employing 27 more people for the year, which would have increased they've had to increase their capacity by 50% in the contact centre, and that would have cost them £1 million to do that every year to maintain that number. So that's effectively a cost avoidance number that we ended up with for them on the back of the work we did. So from a customer perspective, their outcomes, we saved them 100,000 hours of queue time for the people in Newcastle, which is an average wait time per call reduction of about 10 minutes, which obviously meant less frustration and improved customer satisfaction, which also contributes partly to the AHT drop because people are complaining they've had to hang on for an hour to get through. So that's Newcastle City Council. Next one's super secret UK government one. You know where it is already, so just not allowed to put the name on. So this one is we've finished this one, and we're now working with another department in the same area. So this one's a little bit different. So the background for this customer is they were actually a existing customer using our central government antenna system, which is effectively overarching telephony system, runs everything, 10 Downing Street, the whole 9 yards are on it. So they were all part of that big platform. Struggling with the services in one of the areas, and running a really high email backlog and failing the telephony service levels in that area. So what we did was we offered them that step one and said, let us come in do a free diagnostic, we'll sit in a room, we'll work out whether or not we can help, and if we can, then we'll tell you how we can do it. So what we found, in the area, they were running average calls about just over 5,000 a week they were getting in, and then emails they were getting about the same number of emails, but they also had 13,000 emails sat in a backlog that was growing at the time at a rate about 400 emails a week were going into the backlog over the period. So when we did the analysis through what Sandeep and Simon do in the data bit, we discovered 20% of the calls are repeats that get answered. So those are definite spin calls because they just keep phoning back till you answer them. 30% of the calls matched to the CLI. Nobody knows. Nobody knows where they went. We know some went to email, but we didn't know exactly how many because there was no link between the two systems. But we know that a number will have migrated to email because they never got answered on the phone. And only 50% of the calls actually got answered. So again, really high abandon rate. For emails, about 10% of emails were from the same sender with the same subject line. So they were just either updates or chasing things. So we could see that in the data. And we knew that up to 1,500 emails were tied to this. Not exactly how many, but sort of up to. And then we also knew from anecdotal evidence that some of the calls that they were getting here were because they'd not answered the email over here. So you have that cyclical spin of I'm doing my emails and then I'm getting more calls, and I'll do my calls and I get more email, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So from an outcomes perspective, so what we worked out was if we kill the spin in telephony, that'll drop the offered volume down to about 4,000 a week, much more manageable number. For emails, the reduction in email volume we estimate to be anywhere between 20 and 40%. And the reason for that is obviously we couldn't track how many of those 1,500 calls actually emailed because there was no link, because they don't have customers, they have cases, so you can't tell. But we knew that we would get a reduction in there of something, so we estimated it could, you could end up with anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 emails a week coming in. And I think they're around 4,000-ish on average. A bit more at the minute because it's actually their busiest time of year, just after Christmas. So we kind of wanted to obviously impact those reductions, change the number of people so they don't need to chase their emails up because we've answered them, and we wanted to make sure any applicant to the process was dealt with in their channel of choice. So if they emailed us, they got an email response. If they phoned us, they got answered. It wasn't a case of we were inadvertently bouncing them between channels. So what we did for these guys is, again, broke the optimisation down into 2 stages. So the initial stage was a back to basics for the email and the admin. So get on top of the backlogs, get on top of the productivity, all those sorts of bits and pieces for those. So what we actually did was we looked at their MI and their BI dashboards, and enhanced the functionality to add in what we felt were missing metrics. And we also, within the admin area, they have, I think it's about 10 different types of admin, quite small niche pieces of work, but they had no way of tracking how many pieces somebody had done. Their case management system wouldn't give them it. So we instituted a way for them to count how many bits of work people had done, so we could at least then track how productive they were being. Based on all the changes that we made to the MI and the data, we then coached the team leaders on all the new measures that we put in and on the changes that we'd done, so that they fully understood it and then could have those meaningful conversations with their agents to get the best out of them. We also instituted a priority matrix for emails. So this is around working the best way to tackle the email backlog. So what we did in there was effectively we instituted 2 things. One, identifying and managing the duplicates. So any duplicate chase emails, we could identify those in the system and then give those lists to agents to work. So you might be clearing 10 emails for one. And then the other one is to put in what we call a fire break, which effectively separates your backlog from your WIP. And by managing the incoming, you'll stop the spin of people chasing on the new stuff that's coming. And you also take some of the backlog out because some of those will be duplicates from the backlog. So it kind of just separates the two off, hives the two off, so you can concentrate on stopping more volume coming in. And again, focusing on real-time management of clearance. So they were very good at looking at agents levels, but they never really managed their clearance rates. They kind of always look at the problem and go, oh, well, that agent's not being productive. It's like, don't matter. If you need to do 1,000 a day, did you do 1,000 a day? Yes or no? That's the only really bit that matters. I don't care if an agent's gone 70 to 75% or 75 to 70% productive. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things on a day-to-day basis. It's the overall clearance rate. So we kind of went and refocused those conversations back from a management level and just let the team leaders speak to the agents and kept the service managers above that level. Once we'd done the email and admin, we went to kill the spinning telephony. So the way we did that is we recalculated the target service levels. Their aspirational target was 15 minutes average speed of answer, which is still too long. So it was still going to generate spin. So their spin, so the 50% answer rate, we reckoned you'd probably take about 15% out of it if they got back down to the 15, but that's still got too much spin in it. So we actually worked out what the right number was, and it was 20 seconds, which you can imagine the look on the faces when I went, yeah, you need to go from 46 minutes to 20 seconds. They nearly had a fit, but we got through it. What we did then was we ensured that telephony was a priority. So a lot of customers find that when the customer get emails in and they get a backlog in emails, they try and focus on the emails because it's work that doesn't go anywhere. And then they just forget the telephony, which is what they'd done. Logical, because I've got emails that I need to do. Actually, not realising that the telephony drives the email, and the email drives the telephony, whereas if you kill the spin in the telephony, you kill the email off as well. So we got them to refocus on the telephony, because that's the one that has the most downstream impact. Adjusted the schedules to better align the staff to demand profile. I had lots of different little bits of activities in each individual schedule. So like doing hour phones, an hour admin, an hour email, then maybe an hour phones. We went, yeah, stop that. Just focus the right amount of people to deal with the telephony and then slot the admin and the email around it. They were trying to kind of spread the pain, but by spreading the pain, nobody was happy and everything were on fire. So we kind of worked out a better way for them to reschedule it. And again, focus on real-time management of the telephony service. Make sure the agents are where they need to be, when they need to be there, and they are doing what you expect them to do. So, what happened from their perspective? So they had a first contact answer rate, which is the number of calls that are answered first time and don't call back, was 26%. Abandon rate was 55%. Productivity we calculated at about 56% of measurable productivity, because there were a lot of things they couldn't see and therefore couldn't manage. When we finished, first contact answer rate jumped to 88%. So 88% of customers now get answered first try and don't phone back in 7 days. Abandon rate we dropped to 1.5% from 55%. And productivity, measurable productivity is up to 87%. So it's like a 34-35% increase in productivity that's measurable. So outcomes from a citizen perspective, so before, there were an average speed of answer of 2,760 seconds, which is 46 minutes. You know, money, response times for an email were on average 21 days. And processing time between each part of their process, so their little teams moving the next piece of work along, was about 10 days to get it moved from one part of the process to the next. By the time we'd optimised everything, their average speed of answer for January was about 47 seconds, up to about 30th of Jan. So not quite the 20, but we only needed the 20 to break the spin cycle. 47 is actually really good, and actually really their target should be about a minute now. Response times for email are between 3 and 5 days. So they don't ever let it slip past 5, and at the minute they're about 3.5 days service level on email. And their processing time is back under 5 days for moving bits of work on in the process for them. Okay, so that's that.